I might just run some stuff around. We all know there's election time coming up, and this is really, really, really an important time for us. It's probably more important now than ever before, because there's actually an underlying movement that we can actually create a bit of change. We're not going to change government. Anyone who thinks we're going to change government at this election, man, I've got a bridge to sell you. It's a really nice bridge. It's grey, it's gold, it's got a great location in the middle of Sydney. But what we can do is we can upset the norm, and that is what we need to do. I've been fighting this fight now for a long, long time, and been trying to change minds. I'll give you a bit of background. I used to be heavily involved in the LNP and the Liberal Party. I was majorly involved in politics and all that sort of stuff, and I saw from the inside how much bullshit that the born to rulers that are currently in politics think. And put it this way, mate, they go into university now thinking that they're going to be Prime Minister. That is exactly what they're doing. And they don't care about you. They definitely don't care about me. If anything, if they could eradicate me, they probably would, because I'm going to tell you a lot of things tonight, and I have been over the last few nights, that will shock a lot of people. Man, they are here to eradicate you. One of the things that I heard the other day, and I mentioned this on my podcast with Grace last night, was for the first time ever in my life, I heard a mother talking to her son saying, you need to go to university, get a good job, and join the public service. Now, the only other time that I've ever heard that was when I was been dealing in communist countries, China, Vietnam, Russia. You know, it now goes to show you that our society has got such a level that the best job that someone can get is now the public, is now the government. That's what we need to change. And that's because the education systems are absolutely shit. We're in a really sad state of affairs. Our education systems are crap. No amount of money will fix that. What we need to fix is the people writing the curriculums and the teachers themselves. Most of the teachers are, especially in inner city schools, from the feedback I'm getting from a lot of parents, and there's probably a lot more feedback from parents on here tonight, is that the crap that they are feeding children is just ridiculous. It's actually shameful what they're doing. And if you have a look at the metric on leading countries in the world with education standards, Australia's not in the top 20, I'm afraid. We used to be. We used to be in the top 10. Now I think we're lucky if we're in the top 60. We're going downhill very, very fast. And it's pretty much since probably the end of the 90s that we've slid out of the top 20. So, yeah, we're in dire straits, people. And I thank every one of you for being here. And, hey, Warren's joined us.
I'm here, mate. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I was just going to take over and, just...
That's fine. I'm not needed. I'm just the assistant, mate.
Exactly. Yeah, we've got Grace here as well anyway. So
I'm just superfluous. You don't need me.
Lovely to see you, mate. And thank you for inviting me on tonight.
Oh, look, I always like hearing your wisdom. And what's interesting is everything you're saying, I'm thinking, you bugger, you snuck into my last webinar an hour ago and listened in secretly, because I was saying very similar things, how bad things actually are, and how serious this was and how serious it was about taking action, and that right now you still can, but there will be a time when you won't. And we're very seriously bad when you've got tennis players being blocked out from vaccines and you got stuff like that. So I said we're in a very serious place. And the only reason it's quietened down is they just want to win their election right now. So they don't give a rat's ass. So I'm very interested to hear myself when you said you got some straight stuff.
The thing is, it hasn't quietened down. The thing is, Warren, I'm just putting some light on. This is so everyone can see my Picasso face. The thing is, it hasn't quietened down. The media has shifted their focus to try and make sure that Albanese wins. That's all that's happened, right? Yeah. And once everyone realizes that's sorry, guys. Let me just change something here. Once everyone realizes what's going on, and very, very few people will. I'm now at the point, and Warren, you and I have had this conversation before, where I actually think 90% of the population of Australia are gone. You can't save them now. They're bought into it. They require the government's mandate. One of the things that I saw today, again, which just made me realise that humanity's stuffed, was a woman, and I'm sorry to pick on women here, but a woman in a car on her own with a mask on. To me, that just tells me where we're going. And it was a Range Rover so presumably you would think that she's from an educated family.
I have seen worse than that.
Yeah, I know. Oh, yeah, but mate, some of the stuff that's happening, and some of the stuff that is still out there, is making me feel really sad for where Australia is at the moment. We're heading downhill really quick, really, really quick.
Yeah, I actually said, Stephen, on the webinar before to people, I said, sometimes you got to face the ugly truth. It's like when you find out you got cancer, you got to face it and either accept your death or deal with it. And I remember when my health was very, very bad years ago, and I had to finally accept the truth and not pretend that I was okay. And it was a lot of work to get myself back, even though people told me I couldn't. And I said, you got to accept Australia's in a very bad way, and by a miracle of God, we'll be a fully communist, fully social credit country within the next few years, because people are compliant. They are going woke. They're more concerned about transgenders being allowed to play sport than they are about the fact that rights, freedoms, they're being muzzled up like little bitches going into cafes. And I would sometimes go into cafes and want to scream, because I was saying to someone the other day, I said, no, you'd be the same. I'm glad that I did everything I could myself. I got out there in the courts. I fought legal practice boards. I fought governments. I even had a top prosecutor in Queensland laugh and said, I've never had anyone whip my ass like you did today. I was winning in court, but I got worn out in the end. But at least I fought. At least I tried. Yeah. And at least I gave it a shot. And I think and I realize now that people don't want their freedoms in Australia. And whether we like it or not, it's going to impact on us. And we've got to make sure we've set things up in place to minimize the impact.
And look, I said this last night on Grace's, when I was talking to Grace, that the biggest shock to me at the moment is this transgender movement. 0.04% of the population, right, is trying to eradicate 50% of the population. So hear me, people. If you're a woman, right, and you vote left, green, anyone that supports transgender, you are wiping yourself out, right? Jermaine Greer doesn't support this, right? So if it was good for women, she'd be all over it. Transgenderism is about wiping women out. I'm lucky. I've got a dick. I'm a bloke. I won the Lucky Sperm Club, right? But in history, if we look at history, women are treated as shit under socialist and authoritarian regimes. And that's where we're headed. So if you're a smart, intellectual woman and you vote for these people, sorry, I don't want to know you, because you're voting to get rid of yourself.
Yeah,
that's the bottom line.
Well, it's interesting I agree, when socialists do that, women get badly treated, they end up getting veiled, they end up becoming objectified. And you see that in Islamic countries.
And if people think that the veil is only in in Muslim countries, read the Bible, people.
Yeah.
Read how women were treated back, 2,000-3,000 years ago. They all wear veils. They all had and back then a lot of it was socialist. That was a socialist authoritarian era that was very, very large. So let's not have that rise up again. And You know, let's vote. Anyone who does not want to see the destruction of women, do not vote for anyone that has anything to do with transgender. If you just did that, there's probably only 10 people you could vote for.
Do you know, Steve, that there was like, I saw a poll today. Do you know how much support in Australia women being, transgender women being allowed to play sport in women's? Only 12%. 88% of Australians do not want transgenders playing women's sport. It's saying put them in their own competition. It's like having women have a competition, men have one. By all means, set up a Paralympic like they have. Set up a transgender one. If people, you know, if men decide they want to, you know, cut their dicks off and then become a woman if they want to, I mean, God, bravos to them. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not stopping
you doing it.
No.
And it says clearly says in our Constitution numerous times, we are to be governed in the majority. So how is 0.04% of the population governing in the majority, right? This is why all the people that vote for someone who doesn't stand up for the Constitution, right, is the problem. And that is the biggest problem. I also watched the debate last night with Pauline, Campbell Newman, Katter, and Clive Palmer of the UAP. And I was actually dumbfounded that all four of them didn't understand the basic things of the Constitution. All of them. All of them need to go and read what the Constitution actually says, because on certain points they were all wrong. And this is the problem. We've got politicians in government who have been led up the garden path by bureaucrats. Meanwhile, bureaucrats are the biggest problem, because the bureaucrats are growing at 9 and 12% around the country. They're the biggest problem, not the politicians. Because we're the problem with the politicians are the problem with the bureaucrats. So, you know, we're dickheads for voting in idiots, and then idiots are going to put idiots to run the country. And that's the thing. So if you want to change the country, we have to change. Because that's the only way we're going to change. We have to change. We've got to be totally open with ourselves and say, my hands up, I am the problem. I have voted, or I have done stuff that I shouldn't have. And once you own up the problem, you can now go and fix it. So, you know, simple, you know.
Good speech, Steve.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you honestly reckon is going to happen with the federal election? Like, it's so interesting. Like, you can see Morrison's actually saying a few of the right things about, to his credit, he actually stood up and, for the first time in his life, he got some balls and stood by his candidate, Catherine Deves, against transgender. And I thought, it's made the election interesting, because it's probably the first time I've seen him show some courage and conviction for what he believed in. So it's kind of the bookmakers, I was looking at the odds, they're almost getting close to even now. Like Labor about 1.72, the coalition's at 2.10, and the hung parliament's 2.37. So it's really getting interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. I believe we've got the opportunity to create hung parliament, both in the Senate and in the lower house. I think there's enough movement now if people vote correctly. So this election's a bit different to the last federal election. It's optional preferential. So you don't have to number all the boxes, right? Where it used to be preferential. So what you've got to make sure now is, if you only go 1, 2, you have to make sure that the person that you are voting for second is where you want your vote to end.
Yeah.
Right. And the problem with that is you need to know where their supporter base is likely to push their vote. So, and this is where we've got to get a bit smart about how we vote, is if you don't want the Greens, Labor or Liberal, that's fine. Put them the bottom 3, right? You know, in whatever order you want. But make sure the top ones, right, are where you want it to go, and hopefully one of them will get into second before a major party, right? And then they're in the runoff. So we need to get smarter with how we vote. and away we go. So, and that's on us. Yeah, don't follow the how to vote cards. The how to vote cards are only there to keep them in power. That's it.
Yeah, well, it's certainly going to get interesting. So, you know that Albanese has come to WA and he's going all out over here because he reckons this is the key state. What do you think of that?
WA is probably the state that will make or break this election, same as Tasmania.
Yeah.
Queensland, look, there's no one in Queensland up here got the baseball bat out to really change the coalition in Queensland. So I expect, if anything, Labor might win one and the coalition might pick up another one or something like that. So it'll even out. Queensland will even out. What will have the impact is WA. There's a couple of retiring people over there. There's a bit of changes with the borders, with the boundaries and all that sort of stuff. So it's notionally Labor, WA. So if we end up with a shit government, it's all WA's fault. All right, I'm just going to put that out there now. I'm just going to blame WA. We should, build. So, but that's where I'm thinking it's going to land.
WA. It's interesting over here because Mark McGowan's made a lot of mistakes in recent months, and he kept changing his mind, and his popularity's dropped significantly. And it only comes down, though, to how much it's dropped. Because the other problem is a lot of people don't like ScoMo either, and so it's kind of like which one they like less. that's the issue over here. But
and that's happening in Victoria and New South Wales as well. I think we're going to see about 25-30% of the people go to minor parties, which will be a huge amount. It's been growing over the last several elections, but I think this time it could blow out. And as I say to people, when you're voting, if you really want to change the system, make sure the major parties don't get their biggest payday. Election day is when the major parties make most of their money. Right? It's not through donations, it's through the AEC. The AEC will give them $2.93, I think it is, per person that they get in a seat. Right? That's why they run candidates in seats that they know they can't win. It's because of the money. If you get 4% of the vote, you're then entitled to $2.93. I think it's $2.93. Might be a bit more, might be a bit less. It changes every election. But that's where they make most of the money. I think the Libs were 9 million last election. Labor were about eight something. There was 3 million for the Greens. One Nation got some. I can't remember how much. But this is how the major parties, and this is how the Greens survive. They're 8 to 10% all the time. 8 to 10, 8 to 10, 8 to 10. Never changed. Hasn't changed in 40 years. Right? 8 to 10%. But they survive because on election day, they get a big shitload of money. That's what we need to break. That's one of the biggest cycles that we need to break. And then start feeding that money back to the minor parties. But the minor parties need to put the big boy pants on, right? And stop being populist on one issue. They need to be broader in their issues, right? So they can go to more people, right? And then they can attract more money. But they need to be there next election. The biggest problem is, have a look at Nick Xenophon in South Australia, right? He's there one election, does fairly well, doesn't back it up next election. Dickhead. Right. This is the problem. Right? You need to be there election after election after election. And that's why One Nation is getting traction. UAP is getting traction. LDP is getting traction. KAP here in Queensland is getting traction because they're there election after election after election after election with pretty much the same candidates. Right? You can pretty much tell in the major seats that they're going to be on the money for, right? They're in that. And that's the biggest thing. So they need to be proper. They need to be someone that you can actually get behind election after election, and then they will change the vote. But at the moment, it is hard to pick a minor party every time because they flip, they flop, they may, they might, So, they need to do the heavy lifting as well as us, the voter.
I mean, of the two big ones, One Nation and United Australia, any of those ones particularly that you think might do very well, or do you think they're both in a similar position, and will they support each other?
What's that, mate? Sorry, you just broke up.
The United Australia and the One Nation, I mean, which one do you think is most likely to get results? Palmer from all his money spending, Hanson from her years of being known, or probably the two of them together, basically just join forces?
So what I'm seeing on the ground is One Nation's going to do what One Nation does best, WA.
Queensland,
right? We're the redneck states, mate. We don't eat tofu and sip lattes, and so One Nation will do well there. Country, rural area.
Yeah.
UAP, on the other hand, is getting a lot of momentum. I'm finding in places like Victoria, where they're just sick of the major parties being basically get a lower house seat. Doubt it. Will UAP take a seat off One Nation in Queensland? Possibly. It's going to be tough. The sixth seat here in Queensland is going to be up between, I think, Amanda Stoker, Pauline, one of Pauline's candidates, and one of Clive's. That's where I think. So Amanda Stoker's LNP. So that's where I think the sixth seat is going to fall. I think it's going to be two LNP, two Labor, one Pauline, and one of the other ones. So that's where I think we're heading in somewhere like Queensland.
So another question that James Vano was asking me today, which I'll ask for the group. Would you say, Stephen, what's going to be the big difference depending on whether Libs win or whether Labor wins or whether there's a hung parliament? Like, what do each of those scenarios mean for the sovereign individual and what steps we should be taking?
Okay, so on who's going to win, who stuffs up the least. That's it. Yep. This election is not about ideas because there is no ideas. Both of them pretty much have their ideas are the same shit. And so it's who stuffs up the least. Now, likely scenario, hung parliament. And in a hung parliament, you tend to get the lowest common denominator. So you tend to get a Labourish style government. Now, on freedoms away quicker than Labor, right? So whenever people have lost freedoms the greatest over time, it tends to be a coalition government and they tend to sneakily do it. Labor, on the other hand, splash the cash, drive socialist agenda. They don't hide what they're going to do. Go and read their manifesto, people. It tells you in there, the Greens are going to support them, so you're going to get net zero everywhere, right? Now, for a sovereign person, you're probably going to do better under a Labor government because guess where all their money and all their supporters' money held?
Offshore.
Right? Offshore in foundations. Why is Twiggy and all the billionaires putting all their money into foundations in Australia? Simple. Really simple, people. It's not hard. Follow where the money goes. Where the money goes, they know. And put it this way, the billionaires are getting ready for a Labor government. That's why we're seeing a whole heap of stuff moving to there. Now, the ALP go on about, foreign ownership and all that sort of stuff. It is bullshit. They're the first people to drive shit offshore quicker than you can say hello, Albo, right? And both parties do it, but the Labor people and their union mates do it more and more. So that leaves us with a stupid hung parliament. Great for the sovereign person, probably gives us another 3 years to really get our shit together before it all goes to custard in the next round. And if you haven't taken action by this election, right? If it's a hung parliament and you don't take action in the next 3 years, you're gone, finished, done. No, you've left it too late. And a hung parliament could also mean that we've got an opportunity to really work over the next 3 years to make sure that we strengthen the minor parties.
Gosh, it's a critical election, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. They're always critical, always have. So I put it to this way to a guy today I was talking to. I said, look, Australia was the boiling frog, all right? Guess what, people? The frog's boiled. That's where we're at. That's where we are. It's 1 minute to midnight. As soon as midnight comes, the frog's boiled. So, get ready to have frog legs, because that's where we're at. But we're seeing the same thing happen around the world. And these things don't happen in isolation. So the ALP are driven by the Fabian Society and all their mates at the World Economic Forum and all the socialist, under think tanks and stuff, BLM and all that sort of stuff around the world. The authoritarian and that in the Liberal Party is no different. It's just called Rhodes Scholarship. It's done at Oxford University, London School of Economics. It's all the same shit, people, right? It just they go different ways to get to one thing: a socialist authoritarian government that is not good for you. So it doesn't matter which way they go. The born to rulers. All right. So at the moment in the current sitting Liberal Party in Canberra, there is 2 people that are members of the World Economic Forum junior leaders. So they're both the same. I think there's 3 ALP members that are part, plus Sarah Hanson-Young from the Greens and a couple others. Some of them are also part of the Club of Rome and all that sort of stuff. So they all go the same way. Right? They all go the same way. And they just do it through different avenues. But the thinking is the same. The thinking is the same. So have a look. What we're seeing in Ukraine right now is a massive warning sign for what's going on. Zelensky is the problem. But the media and everyone is making him out to be a hero, and Putin the problem. Well, Putin's only doing what America and that has done in 88 other conflicts around the world, right? America is the largest aggressor in the world, massively. It has 750 bases, right, in 80-odd countries. Now, why do you need that many bases in that many countries if you're not an aggressor, if you're not trying to take over? So people need to think about what's going on. Putin is only doing what he's trying to uphold: the Belgrade Agreement from 1992, the Minsk Agreement for 2014, and the Minsk II Agreement from 2016. That's all he's trying to do. And everyone's making out Zelensky's a hero. Now, a lot of these people that you're seeing dead on TV is because Zelensky armed the civilian population. When you arm a civilian population, you are creating a militia, and under the Geneva Convention and the laws, they are cannon fodder. So a trained army is going to slaughter people who are untrained. I actually love what Bob Catter said last night. He said, everyone from 12-year-old in this country should know how to use a rifle, clean a rifle, store a rifle, shoot a rifle. That would change the government very quickly. Because the other thing that's happened in this country is the police and the military have sided with the government. When they side with the government, who protects you? Right? Queensland, 3 weekends ago, 100 calls to 000 went unanswered. 100 calls. They think it was more because people couldn't get through. They are not there anymore to serve you. They are there to serve the government, and that is a major problem. And this is all because of these born-to-rulers. You have got people in Parliament that are there because they went into politics at university, went straight to a minister's office or straight to a an elected member's office, from the elected member's office into another staffing position. Then they got a seat, and now they're in Parliament. They think they should rule, not you. And this is the problem. We live in a republic. Don't get me wrong. We do not live in a democracy, people. There's only one democracy on the planet that I really think is actually anything close to a true democracy, and that's Switzerland. Every other country is a republic because we appoint people to represent us in our houses of parliament. We have one layer extra than most republics. We've got a monarchy on top, right? So, let that sink in, people. We are not a democracy. They like to bandy the word around, but we are not. When was the last time a parliament in this country passed laws that were for the people? I can't name it.
No.
So let that be a lesson to everyone on here. This is why we need history taught in schools properly. This is why we need politics taught in schools properly. Because if the people really, really, really knew how our country was run, we would have a revolt. There'd be heads on pikes, And there's a reason that Parliament House faces the War Memorial in Canberra. It is so that the people that represent us know that people that died and fought for everything that happened in the past are watching over them. Guess what? They put the curtains closed. They don't want to know that. They don't want to live up to it.
Yeah, when you think about it though, Steve, you're dealing with a government that, and I've noticed this over the years, of course, having been a father who raised sons and all that kind of stuff, watching an astonishment, governments trying to get involved in people's lives that really are none of their fucking business. Like, do you have to do this when you ride your bike, and then you have to do this when you do this, and then you can't raise your kids in this way. And you can see, and people have just accepted it. Like, you have these absurdities in the schools, which we'd watch, where kids would actually, it could literally be the biggest little shits. There's no capital punishment, like corporal punishment of any kind allowed in schools. Parents are supposedly abusers if they do, anything of that kind. And we become so cushioned and so averse to violence, we're facing violence on a scale. And there's a very good universal law teacher who said that any country that tries to repress and pretend violence isn't happening attracts more of it. It's kind of like what you resist or repress persists. And, I can remember, I have no problem saying, I can remember with one of my sons when he started hitting Grace, and I just said to him, all I said to him is, you do that again, I'll beat the shit out of you. And I said, I don't care what. Did you ever hit your mum again? And as I said to Grace after, I said, we let him get away with that, he's going to beat up women one day, And so I told him, I will beat the shit out of you. And being a lawyer, I will get myself out of it and I will have no consequences. And I said, I know how to beat you up and get away with it. So I said, don't you ever hit your mum again, And we get on great. We laugh about it and talk about it because I never had to touch him because he knew I meant it. I said, I don't care what the law says. You start hitting your mum, I'll beat you up, But I hear parents today, and I even hear them cringe about that, like, that sometimes just going through stuff. And, I had a situation with, one of them as well, who actually took some money from me one time, and I found out about it. And, I was getting all the feminist woke, he's going through a tough time and he's struggling. And he sat down with me and said, Dad, I'm sorry, I want to build a connection with you. And I said, man, I don't want a connection with you. I'm your fucking father. It's my job to kick your ass, you little shit. You're a criminal. You should be behind bars. I said, you have no right to talk to me as an equal human being. You're a criminal. I don't associate with criminals. And when you weren't my son, I'd be arresting you and putting you in fucking jail, you little shit. I said, but you have one chance because you're my son, but I will be willing to work this out with you if you fucking repent and you sort out this crime. And he made it right with me. And now we get on great. But he and I even talk now. We watch an astonishment, a patheticness. Like, I watched men walking in, giving up their jobs, like, I've got to, I don't have a choice. I've got to provide for my family, or walking in wearing masks like little bitches. I'm like, you pathetic little pieces of shit. And I've lost a lot of respect for almost everyone, you know, and that's why I do a lot of my Dr. Bills. That's why I do a lot of my shit stirring, because deep down, it's my way of saying you're pathetic. You're literally a loser of the highest order, you know, like stand true to your fucking morals, you know, stand true to what you believe in and show the women of this country that you fucking have some balls. And, you know, and I find women are standing up more than the men. The women are blooming fighting with everything within them. You know, and I think if you're a man on this webinar, you should go and get some bloody testosterone and get your balls back.
Yeah, and 100%. And look, I never got a flogging that I didn't deserve. That's you know, yeah, you know, and look, I grew up very quick when I joined the Navy, and put it that way, back then there was no safe rooms, you know. The chief would take you out the back on a night when you got shore leave and give you a 1-2 around the, you know, around the dummies, give you a good flogging to pull you into line. So, and that's, you know, that's what we're missing society. Like, it can go overboard, but there is a lot of tribalism that needs to come back, but in a good way.
Absolutely.
Not in the shit tribalism that we've got around the wokeism, but social hierarchy. One of the biggest problems, and you and I have talked about this all the time, Warren, is once you start legislating social morals, right, and moral standards, you go to the lowest common denominator. And this is what I hate is, you know, we've got laws around marijuana, we've got laws around speeding because little fucking Johnny, you know, couldn't keep the weed out and keep his car on the road, right? So what happens is, everyone, you can't smoke weed, you can't bloody drive over a speed limit, you can't do this, you can't do that. Why? Right? If we've got morals and we've got moral standards, right, and we've got social hierarchy, right, the society will sort it out, right? But no, parents have outsourced all of their moral standards to teachers who are fucking 23 and 24-year-old coming out of university with no moral standards of their own. And they think that wokeism is the best thing. So that's what happens, people, right? And we need to take that back. That's the sort of stuff that we need to take back.
Mate, I couldn't agree with you more. It's like I had a conversation with Ed and James the other day about this, because people were saying to me, but, you know, it's not about winning or losing in sport. It's not about this and business. I said, no, I said, the Global Wealth Club, I don't just want to win. I want to obliterate my competition. I want to grind them into the dust. I want to annihilate them, and I want to get rid of everyone. And when I played sport, I broke 5 tennis rackets and 2 squash rackets. I tipped over 2 Monopoly boards, and I was 3-3 poker because I literally loathe losing with everything within me. I was like John McEnroe on steroids. And, you know, 100%. Yeah, I said, we've got to get that winning instinct back. Like, no, fuck these guys, you know? Like,
I had this conversation with Grace last night. The business world that I'm in, there is no such thing as win-win, right? No such thing. Because you might think you've got a win-win deal, but you go away and then you start, fuck, I could have got more. I could have gone this, right? There is no such thing as a win-win deal. No such thing. Win-win is for losers, right? And we need to have that thing back, right? We need to have, here's a gold medal, Johnny. Here's a gold medal, Katie, because you're fucking great. Freddie, you come last. You suck. Go find something else you're good at. Let's bring that type of thing back into society. And then we may see some major changes. But no, everyone's got to get a participation medal.
Oh.
Right.
No, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I remember in school sports, I got my ass kicked in athletics all the time. And I used to be like, you know, oh my God. But I remember when I played table tennis and sports like that, I thought, screw this, I'm not going to keep losing. And even my kids, you know, like that's why James and Edward are good at what they do. Because I remember one day Grace said to me, you know, Grace is a brilliant mum, very supportive of all this, but she said once, you know, and even my mum especially, not so much Grace, would say, come on, you got to let him win sometimes. I said, no. I said, if they're 11 and 12, I want to grind them into the dust. I'm going to keep beating them and keep beating them. And if they ever do beat me, they know they earned it. And I actually remember one time when we were actually in time zone, Steve, playing air hockey, and I always beat them. And James beat me. He's about 13. And he just went, yes. He started running around times going, yes, yes, at the top of his voice. And everyone was just looking. And I'm just like, you fucking little shit. And I stormed out of time zone. He's running around going, in your face, Dad. I said, no, I'm going to kick your little ass. And, we even having an argument the other day if we all took up martial arts. And they were all saying, oh, you'd lose. I said, no. I said, I'm mentally stronger than all of you. I said, I strategically outmaneuver you and I destroy all of you and I kick the crap out of you. And it's good. That killer instinct makes you think. That's why I'm kind of like, no, screw this stupid government. I'm not going to just sit there and be their bitch, I'd rather get taken out in the public street, have a gun put to my head and have my brains blown out in front of everyone and die with fucking honour than be a coward. That's kind of how I feel right now. Like, come on, shoot me, make an example of me. I won't take this stupid little vaccine microchippy shitty little stuff. Just shoot me in public and show dissenters what happens to people who stand up. It's kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah. And on the other thing is, that can go too far as well because that becomes fanaticism.
Exactly.
Right? So that you need a healthy balance in the middle.
Yeah.
Right. And domestic violence comes out of fanaticism. Right. Yeah. And that's where we are, where the minorities at both ends end up destroying everything for everyone else in the middle.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to bring all these standards back. And the only way to do it, right, is for all of us, as I said before, to stand up and go, hello, right? I'm a problem. I need to change the way I vote. I need to change the way I act. Right?
Mate.
Own it first, and then we can change it out there. I own it.
Love it.
Right? And look, I don't get everything right. But as my mentors keep pushing into me, right, and this is another thing, you should have mentors in your life, is my mentors keep saying to me, make decisions, and if you stuff one up, learn from it and quickly move on and make another decision.
Yeah.
Don't just sit there thinking, oh, no, oh, no, oh, no. Make a decision. I've made probably more bad decisions than good decisions, but the good decisions have led me to the right place.
Yeah.
Right? Because I've got on top, up, gone. And I know when I sit and procrastinate, I made a bad decision. But when I make a decision and go, oh, shit, that was wrong, bang, I make another decision to move on, I feel good because I've recognised and I've learned. People don't recognise and learn anymore. It's, oh, no, the government's got to do it. The government's got to fix this, that's the crap. That's the problem, is we're going to change that thinking in us, and away we go. And that leads to sovereignty, Warren.
Yes, I couldn't agree more what you said about balance, because I like and learning from your mistakes. Like I'm amazed with a lot of parents. I can remember, I talk about how I was tough with my kids. I remember one time I overstepped. I went off my face at James, and I realised I'd gone too far. And Grace actually said to me, I think you're a little bit rough on him. And he was very upset. He was quite hurt, would hardly talk to me. So I went down with him. I actually got on my knees and I said, I was out of line. I asked your forgiveness, and he was struggling. And so I just said to him, look, I just basically said to him, look, James, I said, I set you consequences when you play out, you set me one. He goes, really? I said, yep. So I said, you set me a consequence for doing this as a parent. And he set me a consequence. And yeah, I had to take him out, buy him a toy, buy him some stuff and all kinds of stuff. And it kind of felt really good. And I've actually got Ed and James messaging me saying, can you get back to the topic of election?
That's all right, James. But look, this all comes down to the election, right? Yeah, and the biggest thing with the election is we can't fix government. We can't fix where we're at. We can't fix anything until we fix ourselves, because we're the problem. Like, everyone wants to go how rather than going who, right?
Yeah.
The who is us, and like-minded people that are with us. That's how we fix an election. That's how and if you look at my 3 pillars of sovereignty, right, they're all based around the who, me, this person here, right? Personal responsibility, financial independence, and legacy. Those 3 things is all that underpins sovereignty, right? Personal responsibility. I am responsible for what I do, how I vote, right? How I make choices. I am responsible for my own living. I don't go running off to the government to get handouts, right? Because they will control you. And legacy, I give back. I teach. I'll help people, right? I'll make my knowledge available. Right? So that is what we've all got to do, right? And if we all understand that, we can all become sovereign in a small way. You don't have to have 3 passports, and you don't have to have 6 homes overseas. You don't have to have that. If you just started with those 3 principles, you'd be a sovereign person tomorrow, and the rest would follow, because your heart will seek that out. And that's all it's about. And this election is more about that than it is trying to change the people in Parliament, because we can't change them in one election. But this election, we can change ourselves.
Yeah,
then we can get together and talk about how to put the pen to paper. That's the easy stuff.
God, that's really good, Steve. You know, it makes me think, I read this book years ago when I was involved in church called In His Steps. And it was based on a true story of what actually happened in a town that was very corrupt in America. And to cut a long story short, a tramp walked into the church and everyone was despising him. I'm thinking, oh my God, who is this guy? Because it was a wealthy church. And the guy came up the front, but they let him stay. And he actually gave a speech thanking them sincerely for letting him stay, because he was dying of cancer, and he collapsed in front of them and they kind of helped him. And then it moved them so much that they made this kind of pledge, like, what would happen if I changed? And one guy who ran the biggest newspaper, he was in control of the whole media. He said, what if I refused to publish any advertisements from anyone from this point on who was corrupt, who was dishonest? And what if I refused to do any promotion for tobacco or liquor companies that go against my values? And he thought it would, and everyone said it will bankrupt the paper. And he weighed it up agonizingly, and he did it. And for about 3 months, he almost went bankrupt, but he held his ground. And then eventually he won a lot of respect. And there was one by one different people did that. You know, another guy did a similar kind of thing with his business. And within about 2 years, the whole town changed. They lost the election but 3 years later, their next election, they got a whole new fair government. It took 5 years, but it all started because a small number of wealthy guys made a pledge that they would start living by convictions.
Well, have a look at the guy in the US that owns Chick-fil-A. Not going to open on Sundays because of his religion. Yeah. Going to have fair wages for people. Going to have fair conditions for people. He's not only just going to hire the cheapest person, he's going to hire the people at the other end as well. You know, I remember going to Chick-fil-A for the first time, and I was greeted by this old lady who was probably, I don't know, late 70s, early 80s. And she just sat down and talked to us. Well, where are you from? Australia, blah, 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 blah. What a great business. So every time I'm in the US now, I visit that company over any others because they've got similar morals to me. Yeah. Right? Have a look at Gillette, you know, the wokest man, the wokest shaver a man can get at the moment. They've lost so much business, people have gone elsewhere. People want to assimilate with and buy products from people that they recognise with. And it's the same with voting. We've got to do the same thing with voting. Right. So we've got to realise ourselves what it is and then find that person to vote for.
Mate, it's such a brilliant thing you said, Steve. I mean, it moves my heart. I mean, it actually, the Global Wealth Club, you know, that's why we started, because I was fed up with seeing people get scammed on the internet and getting that kind of stuff. And I just brought in strict rules. I even said to the team, we're not going to promote anything dodgy. As soon as we do, we'll quickly fix it. You know, we're going to tell people the truth, and we're going to run our company on that basis. And it's going to be a slower road, because we could get up and sell any kind of scammy product and make a lot of money quickly, but we won't let anything go through that doesn't meet the rules, and we're going to stay within the rules, which made it a lot harder for us in the first year. But we've seen the results, and most importantly, I feel good about doing it. And you can see the change in people's lives here. And I would encourage everyone to live by their moral convictions, like everyone.
Yeah. And look, I've been involved in some industries that I'll vow I'll never ever go back into again. I'll never ever work with someone who's in those industries, you know. And gambling is one of them. I've seen the destruction of what junkets do to people. You know, it's great, quick money, but Jesus, it destroys lives, it destroys people, it destroys communities, and it destroys communities quicker than it destroys anything else. You know, I'm not a big person for alcohol either. I think that is a scourge on society. Have it in moderation and whatever. Yeah, I've got no problem. But because the moral standard of people are so low at the moment, all these vices take over, and that's the biggest problem. And if you notice that the government, it screws around with stuff that is morally correct, but allows the stuff that is morally right to just flourish and go ahead. Even the conservative governments do this because they make money out of it, right? So
Love it.
It's a tough one, a really, really tough one, that one. But you need to do it inside yourself.
God, I love that, because what you're really saying, Steve, if I had to summarize it, and it's kind of gone a different direction, but 100 times better than what I thought it would today, is that sovereignty starts with a whole change in how you feel, how you think, and living by your convictions. And that almost goes back to quantum physics and science. That, I was taught this early on. I was in a very, very good church when I was a teenager, and they always said, don't say, Lord, change the world, but change me. That was what I was taught by my pastor in the church, and always said, start with your own morals and your own convictions. And I mean, I was like you. I grew up and I didn't drink alcohol. I remember refusing. I ran a party. All my friends used to get piss ups, and I didn't do it. And they'd piss themselves laughing at me. And I remember one day they all came to my birthday, and they all said afterwards, they were shocked. They said that was the best party we'd been to. And I had an alcohol free. I wouldn't allow any alcohol at the party, any smoking, anything like that. And yeah, you can really, when you get your convictions right, you can change so many people around you. And a webinar like today has given me probably the first level of hope I've had for a while in all this, because if everyone took this on board and everyone's actions and living by their convictions changed 1,000 people, that's going to have a pretty big spilling effect for this election.
Yeah. And one more thing I will say, everyone out there, stop reading anything about the election right now, right? Go to the AEC website, and I think the election of candidates finishes next Tuesday, I think it is, and then find out who the direct candidates are, and go and do your own research. Get off Facebook, get off everything, find out where they live, phone them up and say, I want to have a coffee with you.
Magnificent.
Right? Do that research, and then you'll find the people to you want to back. Right? And because the media is going to be for what the media wants, and the media wants socialism.
Yeah,
the media wants authoritarianism. The media doesn't want you to succeed. The media is not your friend. Social media is definitely not your friend, right? And I laugh when people say, I heard it through social media that the entire world, right, is against this. Well, hang on a minute. Social media is only on about 500 to 600 million people on the planet. The last time I checked, wasn't the whole world, right? And pretty much out of all those accounts, probably half of them are crap. So it's just looking and doing the research on the candidates. Now, there is some good candidates in the major parties, but the problem is they will be corrupted, right? The machine will corrupt them. Guarantee it. I've helped a couple get elected, and, they are now being corrupted by politics.
Yeah, I mean, Rennick's probably one of the few I've seen who's managed to keep his convictions. Jared Rennick.
Yeah, he's in a major party, so I can't get behind him. If he was in one of the minor parties, I could get behind him. I think he is an okay bloke. I just think that look, I heard it the other day. I think it was Amanda Stoker said, "Oh, but you've got to be inside the house to change it." No, because when the house falls down on you, you get squashed. Right?
Yeah.
Does someone who's trying to demolish a house do it from the inside? Last time I looked, they do it from a great big hammer on the outside. Right? So that thing about you need to be on the inside to change, no.
No, you don't.
You don't. You need to be on the outside. You need to have a clear conscience, a clear heart, a clear mind, and a plan. And away we go.
Well, as I said, there are people in the inside who can be part of making a difference, but ultimately it's certainly not you and my path, Steve. I mean, our path is going to be better off to stay well and truly outside of it and basically, yeah.
Been there, done that, seen how shit it is on the inside. Yeah.
Yeah, and I saw this with in the legal profession. I mean, I went into the legal profession because I really believed in truth and justice, and I was horrified as I found out it was anything but truth and justice. And that kind of showed me how corrupt the whole thing was. And it goes all back to, as you said about America having all these 88 outposts. I mean, you would know this better than anyone, but it's just the revived Roman Empire, America. It's just owning all this kind of stuff. And you've got a whole, Satanist Illuminati organizations control the city of London, the bar, the lawyers, the doctors, they're all controlled by this thing, so it's a whole system and web of evil and corruption, which you just have to say, I refuse to participate in your evil, and you've got to have a black and white standard about it.
And look, people need to, so what will drive the world to war at the moment is the neocons, neoconservatives, they're called. Go do some research on these people. They are evil. Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden. Actually, I don't think Joe Biden is. I don't think Joe Biden even knows who Joe Biden is. I think it's weekend at Bernie's. But the people who are in the background, and Trump was fighting these people as well. That's why he kept getting rid of people. But these neocons have been there for a long, long time. They've been in all parliament. We've got them in Australia. Don't you worry about that now. We've got them here, right? And all they want to see is war and destruction, because war and destruction hides the sins of government.
Yeah, well, you can see that. I mean, everywhere I go, like you said, these war memorials and things like that, and bankers make more wars than anything else. So yeah. I do agree. I think the change has got to start in us. If Australia's going to have any chance of getting away from this, I can't help getting back to the Bhagavad Gita, which is one of the main Hindu Bibles. And I don't know if you've ever read that, but it gives a whole metaphoric story between Krishna and King Arjuna. And to cut a long story short, Krishna gave some amazing advice to Arjuna. He said, you're in a war, whether you like it or not. And he said, just by pretending it's not happening doesn't change it. And he said, and running off into the mountains to kind of be a monk, all you're doing is leaving the problem for someone else. He said, if you're a king, you're living it. It's your duty to fight and fight with everything you've got. Remove anyone out of the way who's opposing you. And if you lose, at least you go with honor. And if you win, you're going to get your country back and you're going to have a good, peaceful way of life for all of you and your people. So it's kind of a good way of looking at it, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's sort of that's sort of a great way to look at stuff. The shocking things that are happening out there at the moment are just ridiculous.
Katrina actually asked a question to you, Steve. Yeah, she said, you said you were going to tell us something that would shock us. All this stuff. Is there anything particular that you're going to say? I think she's asking.
I might leave that for another Tuesday night. A couple of things. I'll keep people coming back. Hey, they're going to come back to the show.
Oh, I love it. You're kind of like...
going to keep people coming back.
Mate, you're like Cobra Kai. Have you been watching that Netflix series? Like, we watched season 4 and we're like going nuts because season 5 won't come out till later on this year. And I'm like, bring on Cobra. They left it hanging. Oh.
Yeah, no, there's... Look, some of the shit that I'm seeing and that's happening at the moment, I put it this way. One of them, and I'll leave you with this, and it's to do with the Ukraine. One of them is that there is people running around the Ukraine who are killing innocent people to blame it on Russia. And they are Western allies that are doing it, and they are doing it to create World War III. So I'll leave you with that.
Yeah.
And you won't hear that in the mainstream media. But that's from a guy that works at a 3-letter agency that's currently on the ground.
Well, it sounds right to me. And the last thing I'll say, Stephen, any final comments that you want to make about, the event we're doing in 10 days' time on the Plan B Great Reset? What are you going to be sharing about that will make it absolutely good for people to come? Yeah,
so what I'm going to share about is creating a bit of a Plan B, second citizenships, residencies, where you can go and do some research and all that sort of stuff. And then on the second day, I'll be doing, I'll touch on family offices and securing your wealth and stuff like that in a legacy, and in a way we can go. So.
Yes, and I'll be speaking a bit about wealth protection, advanced foundations in Australia and how they work, and definitely about the residual income and the mindset and about doing that kind of stuff. But yeah, we're going to be teaching, like Stephen mentioned, about how to labour, about foundations and about using that kind of stuff in Australia. I'm a big believer in that and I use it myself, and I'll be sharing more about that. So, yeah, so basically with the event, who's coming with that event, by the way? Suzanne's coming. Awesome. Yeah, a lot of you are coming. So the event's going to be on the weekend of the 30th and the 1st, basically. So it's going to be like all day on the 30th and then part of the day on the 1st. So the Plan B guide. So here's a link here. You can get to see Stephen and my handsome face again, you know. I mean, I'm just the arm candy, of course. Stephen's the main guru. I'm just the arm candy.
Mate, I'm a Picasso. If you want a second opinion, ask me again.
I always say, I say to Vina, like with Walso, Steve, I'm her trophy husband. Steve's her kind of kid's husband. I'm the trophy husband. So. Yeah. Okay, well, thanks for coming, Steve. Really appreciate it and enjoy the banter, and great to have some real conversation about the truth. So, yeah, comedy, Jared. We'll start our own comedy show very shortly, Steve. I'll let you know when we're getting out.
Laurel and Hardy will do the cruise ship. We'll do the cruise ship round.
Absolutely, mate. Okay, see you later.
Yeah. Remember, guys, it's all up to you. So thanks.
Thanks. See you later.